How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. I try to do these as often as I can, but I can't always do them as often as I'd like. If you're just tuning in, if you're not familiar with my work, follow me on Twitter at Timcast for breaking news and live streams from around the world. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Timcast and hit the thumbs up button because that really helps the channel. So today, I used to work at Vice, and a story came out from the New York Times talking about sexual harassment, lawsuits, settlements, and it involves people I know. Some people have been fired, and some people were victims. And so I did a video on this channel talking about the Young Turks and what's going on with the Young Turks and how I feel about that. And then on my second channel, I did a longer discussion about what was going on at Vice. You know, keep in mind, for those that actually watched the video on my second channel, I worked there, so it's a lot more personal. Someone accused me of white knighting, which I just roll my eyes at. Look, they're mad that I'm defending the victims of sexual assault. This isn't me just, you know, riding up on a horse and being like, I'm going to defend, you know, and believe women or something like that. Not to say that you shouldn't, but these are people I actually know. And one of the people who is named in the article is someone that is, I mean, I haven't seen these people in years, but I consider them to be friends. So when there's a supervisor who is unprofessional, I'll be nice about it, I'll call him unprofessional, someone who it is no secret that Jason Mojica and I did not get along, and I had multiple complaints about this guy to HR. To hear that he was assaulting women, I'm not surprised. And then when people I consider to be friends are saying, hey, look, this guy did these things, I believe my friends, right? It's that simple. So we can get started, but you know, the main point of this stream isn't necessarily to rehash the stories I already did today, but to talk to you guys, the audience. If you want to hop on the super chat and make a donation, I believe I have it set up correctly this time so that your chat appears in the stream, and subscribers and donors super chats will also appear. So I just see Michael Jameson just subscribed. Thank you, Michael Jameson. And I think, you know, about the chat on the screen, people have complained that they're like, Tim, you need a moderator because the chat's horrible. And I've actually had like far lefties try and use screen grabs of the chat to accuse me of being like a Nazi or something. This is what I've always said. Look, chat away. I mean, if you break YouTube's rules, then YouTube comes after you. I don't know what you expect me to do, or I don't know what anyone expects a moderator to do. Because if someone says something, I mean, what are you going to do? Try and track down that comment and delete it? So if YouTube says it's not allowed, you can't do it, then YouTube should implement it. Otherwise, as long as you're not doing things that are actually illegal, I believe in free speech to the letter of interpretable law in the United States. That means no creating clear and imminent threats, no incitements to violence. But other than that, you can be as dirty and offensive as you'd like. It is what it is. I don't think I'm going to try and track down these comments. So first, I know there's a bunch of people who are hopping in the comments already. If you got, as I mentioned before, the super chat is available, and when you post a super chat, your comment will appear on the screen. The comments already appear on the screen, but super chat gets its own little special area. So before I jump into the stories, all right, so what I want to do is I want to show these stories, the Young Turks and Vice, and then move to comments and talk about them. So I'll only go over them for a little bit, but first, someone does have a super chat. KS Wheel says, I'm behind, so maybe this has been mentioned, but the character Morgan Freeman played in The Shawshank Redemption was Irish in the short story. I have no idea. But thank you for the super chat. All right, so let's take a look at some of these. Oh, you know what I got to do? I got to move this up above everything else, unfortunately. Yeah, so if we're looking at these stories, I can't have the chat open, but the Young Turks founder apologizes for ignorant past blog posts about women. If you guys haven't seen this story, I did a video about it. Holy, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on live streams, but holy bumble buddies. I'm not going to swear. He said some really messed up stuff. Obviously, the genes of women are flawed. They are poorly designed creatures who don't nearly want to have sex as often as needed for the human race to get along fruitfully and peacefully. He wrote that, what was it, like 18 years ago? I just want to say something. That statement comes off as pretty damn anti-science, Jenk. Look, he apologized for this. This is nearly 2 decades old. He wrote this stuff, so I don't hold it against him. I actually think if as I mentioned in my video, if someone's going to come out and apologize, then good for them. Encourage that behavior. And everybody's trying to earn brownie points by digging up people's past and trying to get them to pass these purity tests. That's stupid. What I will say is, aside from being sexist and being, I mean, it sounds like he's angry that women aren't having sex enough, which is weird. I don't know what his problem might have been. He says they're not having sex often enough as needed for the human race to get along fruitfully and peacefully. What do you mean? Human beings have done really, really well. Like, evolution dictates, right? Humans evolved, and women and men have just as much sex as they should have for humans to survive. Granted, our society and our culture change our behaviors as we adapt new technologies and our culture evolves. A lot of people have stopped having families. This is an entirely different issue. For billions of years, I would say life has had just enough sex to get along fruitfully. So that's just not accurate. But let's take a look at some of the other statements he has. Let's see. Women ignore these rules at your peril. He wrote rules about, when women should put out or whatever things. Let's see. Rule 2, there must be an orgasm by the fifth date. It's just really immature. I mean, Cenk at the time was in his 30s, I believe. And he's 47 now, so it's 18 years ago, so he was late 20s. It's all very immature. And it's not nearly the most offensive things that they said. Let me... Oh, yeah, and I'll move on in a second, but let's take a look at the Vice story real quick. So for those that are not familiar, you can get a glimpse before I move on to other stories. Just to start you guys off, this is by Emily Steele. And it talks about Vice, the cutting-edge media and allegations of old-school sexual harassment. In this story, you've got 4 women who have accused different people at Vice of sexual harassment. And in one portion, actually sexual assault. I believe they accused Jason Mojica of actually grabbing a woman's breasts and ass at a party. Yeah, so Helen Donahue, she's been tweeting about this, said that Mojica grabbed her breasts and buttocks at a company holiday party. And she said that I believe Miss Ashbrook was the HR person, told her the incident was not sexual harassment, but rather someone making a move on her. Yeah, I just gotta say, that's not sexual harassment. It's not. It's sexual assault. Like when someone gropes you in public. So, we'll come back to Vice. I just wanted to lightly mention that before we go to the... I think the Gateway Pundit has a lot on this Cenk stuff. So this is by Cassandra Fairbanks, who I do know, to keep in mind. And here's a statement where he says the genes of women are flawed. There's a lot of really bad stuff in here, but what I want to find is, the rules of dating. You've got this statement where he says, since the site is now an arm of the Young Turks show on radio, it will soon showcase such lovely features as pictures of the young virginal interns who was on the show. I don't know if he was trying to be like a shock jock or something, if he thought he was going to be like a young hip, DJ or something on Sirius. I don't know what his plan was. But the racism stuff is pretty, it's pretty bad, but here we go. This is the one that's really bad. You've got David Kohler, who is a co-founder of the Young Turks, and I believe he's a producer. And look at this. It says, turns out they were 3 teenage girls, whores in training, literally looking for boys to pick them up. Like, okay, come on, dude. They're just like teenage girls. Cenk soon joined me, and we discovered these 3 little spoiled brat bitch young American girls on their way to becoming abused porn actresses or dispensable property in a New York City prostitution ring. The girls live in a small town nearby, and were in this town visiting the grandma of one of them. They were around 14 to 16, and in a few more years will be pretty damned good looking, but not great. Holy shit. I shouldn't swear, but god damn. That's some pretty messed up stuff to say about 14 to 16-year-old girls who are in a small town and just like walking to a gas station or something. And, the thing is, Cenk apologized for these statements, but David Kohler refused to comment, which is... he refused to comment. He said he didn't want to talk about it, and apparently hung up. The rap is... I believe the rap may have broken the story, I'm not sure, but I've seen a lot of people talking about it. So, let's talk to... Let's hop to the... Oh, okay, so it looks like that super chat is from the last stream. KS Wheel said, previous live stream, people complaining about characters being made black even though white in origin, sent after end Merry Christmas. That kind of just changed the subject because I could certainly talk about that. But before, you know what, we can talk about cultural appropriation in movies and why I think the protests are all fake, relatively fake. But we'll get into that in a second. And now let's just let's just talk comments and we'll talk about Young Turks and all that stuff and see what you guys are saying. Someone's asking if there's a green screen behind me. Yes, there's a green screen behind me. It's not set up well. It's hung up on the wall, and expansion is difficult and slow because it's there. There's some other stuff. There's music making equipment, and hopefully in the next month or two there'll be someone coming in and we'll be doing more work. But for the time being, I do my videos every day. I'm looking for stories. I'm looking for places to travel to. The holidays gum up everything. So until after the new year, there's not a whole lot I can do going out into the field. But there's still certainly a lot of news happening. So let's see. We got Fyodor 108. Jank just proves more and more to me he has always been a bad person. Can't believe I actually liked the Young Turks at one time. So look, in the video I made today, I said we should congratulate and celebrate people who do better, right? Joey Salads got caught making some really messed up videos, and that was really bad. And he went on the H3H3 podcast and just fessed up to it. A lot of people have not forgiven him or given him a second chance. I don't think you need to forgive him, but I think you need to realize that Joey's a really good example of why you should at least give people a second chance and make them feel good about coming clean. If when Joey gets caught doing this, he basically begs for forgiveness. That's good that he's begging for forgiveness. It means he doesn't want to be this bad guy. But if you don't allow him to apologize and keep working, his only opportunity is to go in the opposite direction and bunker down with deceitful, dishonest jerks. So you don't have to like the guy. You can hate him for what he did. You don't got to forgive him, but when he comes out and says, look, I'm sorry I did this, I'll never do it again, then say, all right, man, right on. Do better, and we will allow you to do better and feel good about it. The same thing I can say for Jank. Look, these posts are from a really long time ago. I understand that he actually comes after people for the same types of behavior, and maybe this will be a nice wake-up call for him. I don't know. I doubt it. But at the same time, if he's deleted these posts, if he's apologized for them, let him do so. That way he changes. Unless you want him to be, posting more of this psychotic nonsense. I'm sure a lot of people on the right would love it if they unearthed posts from Jank from right now of him saying things like this because it discredits his politics. But here's what I need to say to everybody. You want to challenge someone's politics, if you want to challenge the Young Turks and their progressive politics, challenge their ideas, not the people behind them. Because the people behind them are always going to be imperfect. Jank, imperfect. Anna Kasparian, imperfect. If you want to take out their ideas, you have to ignore the people. Sure, it's easy to say, oh, look at these horrible sexist and racist things that Jank said. I don't know if I believe he's changed. But is that going to convince anybody who's sitting there listening to ideas about socialism that socialism is bad? Some people, maybe, but it's just disingenuous. And ultimately, if you want to use these kinds of tactics to change the world, you're not going to change the world. I guess that's the idea. If you want to make the world better, and you use these kinds of tactics, and you're just going to end up with a crummy world. And that's why I think these people who believe the ends justify the means are wrong. Because if you think today you're allowed to commit acts of violence, to lie, cheat, and steal, because tomorrow the world will be better, I assure you, when tomorrow comes, you'll be looking at the next day. You're always looking at the day in front of you, in which case, if you believe the ends justify the means, you will always justify your bad behavior. The ends don't justify the means because we will never meet the ends. We are always progressing. We are always changing. Society's emergent, and we need to have principles today. Otherwise, there won't be any good changes tomorrow, just more bad people. So pop over here. We got a couple super chats. Super news. Tim, can you explain why you're not on Patreon anymore? I am on Patreon. I'm still on Patreon. I just have been complaining about Patreon because they keep rocking the boat. They're trying to sink the ship and damage people's livelihoods. They deleted Lauren Southern without notice, with no chance of appeal, and that took away her planned income, and that's not fair to her patrons or to her. Look, you can think whatever you want about Lauren Southern. You can hate her politics, but Patreon should have said, hey, what you're doing is wrong, and if you do it again, you're out. They didn't. They just abruptly got rid of her. Then they announced these fee changes. This caused me to get message after message and emails from people saying, hey, I can't afford this. You know, people who are giving me $1 or $2 are now paying 35 cents plus a small percentage, and that's pretty big for people who give $1 here and there. So they pull off the platform. I've got people complaining saying they don't want to deal with Patreon's nonsense anymore. So I've had to preemptively say, look, if you don't like Patreon, then I'm on minds.com/timcast, and you can support me through there. You can go to timcast.com/donate and support me there. I am staying on Patreon, but I'm focusing more heavily on other means of fundraising simply because Patreon has done such a piss poor job of creating a stable platform. We'll put it that way. They've created an unstable platform, and they continually destabilize it. So we got another super chat here from Wizards WZRBS. Jank is and was an intellectually dishonest, pompous, disgusting punk. These old comments are merely a different manifestation of a rotten mind. Well, that's a little harsh, but I don't disagree entirely. I think, look, I've been on the Young Turks a couple times. I know Jank lightly. I saw him at VidCon. We chatted a little bit, and I can criticize him, but it is what it is. He does his thing. You get people on the right-wing pundits and left-wing pundits, so I get it. But when I see stuff like this, part of me just thinks that Jank didn't change because he had a awakening where he became liberal. He changed because the business model wasn't working. Trying to be an edgy conservative radio show wasn't working, so he switched to liberal. And I think part of this is at the time, you're looking at the dawn of George W. Bush. And, look, in big cities, people did not like this guy. And there were constantly protests, big protests. And so it's more lucrative to challenge the Republicans as a liberal than it is to be a conservative. The same is true today. The Trump bump, they call it. All these websites getting bumps in traffic, these news organizations, because they're coming after Trump. And it leads to what they call Trump derangement syndrome. Now, I certainly think there's real things to criticize Trump about. Missile strikes in Syria, drone strikes in Yemen, Saudi arms deals, positioning of weapons in Ukraine. Yeah, there's a lot of things talking about. And in my instance, I focus on the conflict because that's kind of my area. So when I hear about war, I'm like, hey, I'm going to criticize that because that's leading us down a dangerous path. But you hear the koi fish story, like Trump dumped the food in the pond of the koi fish. Yeah, well, the Prime Minister of Japan did the same thing. You hear these stories from CNN, from Washington Post about the CDC, and they're just so eager to put out this nonsense that it makes it really difficult to legitimately challenge the things that Trump has done wrong. If the media won't shut up about this Russia nonsense, we can't focus on things like healthcare and war. And that's what blows my mind. There's a real debate to be had about healthcare. There's a real debate to be had about tax reform. And it doesn't happen because too much time is spent complaining about stupid nonsense like the koi fish or the Russiagate scandal to the point where they're now saying Jill Stein is a Russian agent. I kid you not. People are actually saying that. Okay, my God. More super chats here. No Good says, any further thoughts on Sarah, who was mad at NYT for stealing her op-ed idea? She said she won't apologize and asked for the tweet that inspired the idea. People posted it and she never replied. I mean, no, for people who aren't familiar, I made a video on my second channel about this woman who was upset and accused her story of being stolen by the New York Times and handed to a white woman. And it just seems like ego. So I don't really have a lot more to add to that. You can go to my second channel and check that out. It's youtube.com/timcastnews. Subscribe there if you haven't already. And I post videos whenever I can. I have a video today. It's like 20 minutes long of me talking about Vice. But I'll talk a bit about Vice today with you guys when we'll move on to it. Mr. Nicktown says, Merry Christmas. Socialism blows because it disincentivizes personal ambition and stifles personal liberty. That's one of the more common opinions on socialism. I don't mean that to be disrespectful in any way, but yeah, a lot of people are concerned that with the problems with socialism and you're like the Democratic Socialist, Bernie Sanders, is that it does disincentivize people from working hard and solving problems and getting ahead. I think, I'm fairly individualist, middle of the road kind of person. I think there's a decent balance between capitalism and socialism. And I think the U.S. has a pretty decent iteration of what's going on. But keep in mind there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of problems. But hey, for now, we've got a social safety net. We've got certain programs. We have certain aspects of capitalism. And it is what it is. There's a lot more to be said in that direction, but I'm certainly not the expert. But what I will say is that keep in mind, when it comes to human evolution, when it comes to all evolution, creatures on this planet have evolved to try and use the least amount of energy possible. That means if a life form doesn't have to, it won't. I was watching, you ever see B-Movie? That was a meme for a while, where the B-Movie script appeared everywhere. And I think this was B-Movie. Like the lady he's talking to is like, why don't you fly everywhere? And he goes, why don't you run everywhere? It's like, yeah, good point, right? You can run fast. You know, human beings can run, but they don't for the most part. People kind of run for exercise. Sometimes they run when they have to. But if they don't have to, they won't run. So think about it this way. There is a faster means of travel that humans could use that they prefer not to. Why? It consumes a lot of energy. So let's take a look at socialism. When you create a system where people are guaranteed income, and this is true for universal basic income too. This is one of the criticisms for there. And I'm not saying that this is my absolute belief, like I'm absolutely opposed to this kind of stuff, but keep in mind, if people don't have to, they won't. There are hopes that with universal basic income, aspects of socialism, people will be free to work how they want. In the Star Trek universe, I love Star Trek, by the way, they don't have money anymore because they can just replicate whatever they want. So people have found other ways to be productive. I believe that might happen. There's the potential for that kind of evolution if we reach a post-scarcity society. But I also think there's going to be a lot of people that if they don't have to, they won't. And when you introduce socialism in the world today, I believe it is likely you'll encounter people who won't be productive, won't progress, because it's a waste of energy, and we are hardwired to conserve energy. You understand what I'm saying? You know, I guess I gotta nailed it. WZRBS, thank you for the $50 super chat. Merry Xmas Tim, it would be nice to have a national discussion about our military actions in Yemen and Africa. Jenk still blows goats. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the Young Turks and their politics. But look, I mean, if you want to criticize them, there's a lot of people on the right to criticize. And I don't even want to start this conundrum, but, you know, they've got their politics. They play their game. They make their money. They do things that I disagree with. And there are people on the right that do things I disagree with. And it is what it is. You know, people are going to do people stuff. They're going to be tribal about what they do. If Jenk has in the past called out people's pasts and made accusations based on things they posted previously, then live by the sword, die by the sword. Personally, though, I don't like this practice that's risen, where you're gonna try and dig up people's past history to smear them, because culture changes, you know. So we got Game Freak. Thank you for the super chat. Cenk Uygur is a puppet for Al Jazeera and CNN. I mean, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Young Turks. I actually, at VidCon, I got really mad, and in a moment of instability, I'll just call it that, there was a panel, and it was like Lauren Duca, Anna Kasparian, Jeff Jarvis, and some woman I don't remember because I don't think she even has any followers I don't think she's a personality. I think she was just like an organizer. They kept talking about how there's no honest conservatives and saying things like that, and I just got so pissed that VidCon is going to claim to do a journalism panel. But instead of journalists, they bring progressive activists, and what they do, I don't want to say all they do, but one of the key elements of their panel is to rag on conservatives, and that's just blatant hypocrisy. They could have easily invited a number of conservatives who are honest and would have a real discussion to that panel, and it would have been great. Instead, they didn't, and they had a circle jerk. So I actually stormed up and I was like, how can you sit up here and criticize the right, claiming there are no honest conservatives when you don't even invite any? It's fake news. It's fake. They're trying to just be like, oh, we would, but they're all liars. Oh, please, like that's a lie. You know, so I have to deal with these kind of people. You have disingenuous people on all sides, and I don't care for events that are one-sided. You know, one of the things I liked about Kilroy is that it looked like it was excluding the far left. It was going to be fairly balanced. Now, keep in mind, Dave Cullen invited people like Steve Shives, I think his name is. He was invited to Kilroy, but they turned it down. One of the only reasons I agreed in the first place to go to Kilroy was because I saw people who are conservative, people who are alt-right, people who are alt-light, people who are liberal atheists, and I said, all right, this is going to be a real discussion, and I'm willing to do it. long story short, I'm not doing it, but you see what I mean. So let's pop back into the comments. Chunk yogurt, someone says. Yeah, there are a lot of funny things. Someone said, I like how Tim takes the time to make money off it stanks crappy comments from years ago. Way to do, Tim. Make money? I mean, I make videos about things that are culturally relevant based on, I'll just say it. Most of the news stories I cover are simply what's on Twitter and Reddit r/all. So when I'm not out and about covering things on the ground, I try to focus on stories that I think are the most culturally relevant or having an impact on the world. This right now, what happened with the Young Turks, is particularly culturally relevant after what we saw with Sam Cedar, after what we saw with Roy Moore and Al Franken. Now we're hearing that one of the most prominent voices in the progressive movement, a co-founder of the Justice Democrats Political Action Committee, has a sordid past. So it's pretty relevant. And on top of that, we have the Vice story. So we can start talking a little bit about Vice. I don't know if you guys want to have any specific questions outside of the video that I made earlier. I worked there. Way to do, Tim. Ball pit. Can you please play guitar for a minute? I'll tell you what. At the end of the stream, once I wrap up, I'll play the guitar a little bit. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't been playing for a little while. Someone says, yeah, Tim, why don't you just starve and go work in a fast food place? That's the only way to do, in my opinion. If you are not prepared to debate but are willing to destroy those who wish, you are tacitly? I lost the comment. Wait. Admitting your arguments are invalid. Why did I quit Vice? Well, at the time, I had an offer from Fusion. And Fusion was basically a new company that said, hey, we want to do a lot of the same stuff Vice did. We know you were the founding member of Vice News, and we'd love for you to come and do the same thing. And I said, that sounds great. There were also some internal problems I had with some people at Vice who, I'll just say this person is mentioned in this story without getting into too much detail, and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So when I hear these stories about people making allegations, filing lawsuits against particular individuals, I totally believe it. Now, here's what I will say. I'm going to hop over here because there's one thing that I want to say. And look, I'm biased because I've partied with Shane and Andrew and Andrew Crichton and a lot of these people, but I want to show you this guy. This is Andrew Crichton right here. This guy right here. And this is Shane Smith. Andrew Crichton, I've had a drink with him on more than one occasion. He's always been like the most chill dude. In every interaction I've had, he's been very quiet and reserved. And so I gotta say, I'm shocked to hear that someone had accused him of impropriety. Now, according to Vice, I believe, yes, they're denying the allegations and said the woman had initiated and pursued a sexual relationship with Mr. Crichton. The company said in the letter that her termination was based on poor performance, and Mr. Crichton said that he and the woman were close friends for several years before Vice, and that they were occasionally intimate. Once she began working there, he said he was not involved in the decision to let her go. I apologize for the situation, and it caused much thought in my responsibilities of care for my colleagues, and I will hold myself and others accountable in constructing a respectful workplace environment. Here's what I gotta say. Honestly, in this instance, I believe Andrew Crichton. I don't know him that well, but I've had drinks with him on more than one occasion, and I know people who know him, and that seems really out of character. Jason Mojica, the other guy who was named in this story and was fired, that does not seem out of character. Keep in mind, it's no secret among the people who worked at Vice that me and that guy didn't get along. I've had complaints about him, and it was not a cohesive working environment. And he's one of those people that I just didn't feel like dealing with anymore, so I decided just to leave the company. It's not the only reason I left, but I will say that the unprofessional behavior of this guy was a serious contributing factor. Yeah. Without getting into too much detail, because I think the story paints a picture of this guy. When you hear about someone like Jason Mojica, who, by the way, his Twitter is gone, his LinkedIn is gone, looks like the guy's wiped himself from the internet, and you hear these complaints about him, from what I know and from how I've experienced this guy, I'm like, yup. And I'm kind of I'm upset that I didn't know that he he had done these things to people I considered to be friends of mine, and that makes me really, really angry. Like, I try to be reserved when I do these things, but you can rest assured I was just having some conversations where I was swearing a whole lot. Andrew Crichton, on the other hand, without, I think there's always an instance where, no matter how good of a guy you think someone might be, this story absolutely could be true. And as I said in my video on my second channel, I think listen and believe is a bit overzealous, and what we should have is listen and investigate. If somebody made claims of impropriety against Andrew, I think they should be heard, and you should have an investigation. And there you go. I think if someone makes an accusation, we look into it. And sometimes accusations are false. I don't want to say that, all the time women are lying or anything like that, but certainly it does happen, and we need to take that consideration because we want to protect the innocent. And if Andrew was innocent or guilty, that's for an investigation to decide. And it looks like Vice is standing up for Andrew. And in my opinion, from what I know about Andrew, I'm less inclined to believe the story. I'm biased. Like, I know this guy, I don't know who that woman is, so, there you go, it is what it is. But I'll make sure, the coward Liberius, thanks for the super chat. Don't really starve, though. I won't. And KS Wheel said, Kyle K quit Justice Dems as well. Yes, I heard that. So, Jenk and Kyle, what's his name, Kalinske? Let me pull up this guy's info. Justice Democrats. What's his name? Kyle Kalinske. Wow, I got that right. Huh. Yeah, so he quit too, and that's pretty damaging for the Justice Democrats, I would say. So, got another super chat here from Venator Lich. Have you seen Owen Jones' contradictory tweet on socialism liberating individuals? Isn't socialism the opposite of liberty? And Merry Christmas, Tim. I don't think socialism is the opposite of is the opposite of liberty. I think so. There's a funny quote. I can't remember who said this. Let me pull this up. I think it was Rand Paul, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you guys know who said this. They said something like, our society has always allowed for socialism. It's just that people haven't chosen to make it happen. Something along those lines. And if 100 people all come together and say, hey, we really want to make our own socialist enclave, and they all put all of their resources together and then disperse them equally, regardless of contribution, they're free to make that decision. That doesn't mean it's the opposite of liberty. They chose to do it. The difference is when people try to forcibly instill socialism on a group of people. But that's true for any kind of government, communism, socialism, or even capitalism. If there's a group of, a small tribe of individuals, 30 people, who don't have money, and you come by and force them to start paying taxes and trading via currency and regulating their currency, yeah, sure, like you can take someone's liberty away with any kind of system. Inherently, somebody who's born into a capitalist society, I would say it's particularly freer than a communist society. Socialism, communism, a little different. They kind of overlap, but I think communism's significantly more restrictive because there's kind of like a mandate behind, there's no personal property, in which case you aren't free to do what you want to do per se. There's a counterpoint in that capitalism run amok can result in restricted opportunity as well. Ultimately, the way I put it is the monopolization of power is bad. If we have a totally unfettered capitalistic system, eventually power coalesces and you end up with these large monolithic corporations that control everything, and then you lose freedom and liberty. At the same time, a government like communism, where you just decide one day we're going to create a monopoly, results in the exact same thing. Ultimately, it seems like we've had better success with capitalism historically simply because it has a longer period of individual liberty as opposed to socialism or communism, which create a power monopoly instantly. Monopolies are bad, whether it's a corporate, government, or organizational of any kind. And at least when it comes to a free market, not necessarily the idea of capitalism, but free trade and individual rights, it takes a long time for that power to coalesce into a unstoppable monopoly. Whereas, I can say it a million times, government is a, boom, instant monopoly. So let's pop down. No new super chats, but let's see what you guys got going on in the comments. Whenever I'm talking for a little while, I can't really see the comments, so I try to jump down. That's not capitalism, that's corporatism. Right, capitalism there's a few different understandings of capitalism. Sometimes people think capitalism means the fact that we trade with money. That's not necessarily true. It's capitalistic in a sense, but the idea of capitalism is that capital can be used for investment and to make money, and socialists disagree with that because you're making money off money, but that's a whole other argument, I suppose. These arguments, these situations are all very nuanced, and it's not so simple. Even everything I described, there's a lot more that needs to be said about it. We got a super chat here from the Geff. But in capitalism, the power is earned. Not necessarily. I mean, you can say it's technically earned, but look at what happened in the former Soviet states after the fall of the Soviet Union. In Ukraine, you had certain people become oligarchs, where they control a massive, disproportionate amount of wealth. Why? Because they just took it. When the Soviet Union fell, there was a power vacuum. And that created an opportunity for people to just start taking businesses by force. They didn't necessarily earn that. But also, keep this in mind. If you have a small mom and pop shop on a corner of a street, and they're making a decent amount of money, not enough to really grow or expand, but they're making a living and they're servicing the community. Starbucks, for instance, might decide to open next door because it's a good location for a coffee shop. They can operate at a loss because they're wealthy. This puts mom and pop out of business, and then Starbucks can jack up their prices. Not even that, but we've seen instances where Starbucks is across the street from Starbucks. I wouldn't call that earning your position. There's a reason why we have progressive taxes versus flat taxes, and I've talked to people about this. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I try to explain to people. There was a Harvard study that said the amount of money you need to have all your needs met on average in the United States is like $77,000. Then it goes into like individual areas. Like New York, for instance, it's like $137,000 per year if you want to have basic necessities. So $77,000. Let's say you make $77,000 per year at your job. You pay your taxes, and you have now just enough for like a 2-week vacation, for healthcare, for new clothes, and buying a house maybe, and starting like a 30-year mortgage or something. But let's say you're making $300,000. Well, after your needs are met, you have a lot of money to invest. And when you invest that money, let's say you invest $100,000 and you see a 7% return, or let's say you pull out 4%, well, now you're making $4,000 per month extra simply because you have money. But let's take it a step further. Let's say you have a $10 million per year salary. Well, once your needs are met around 100K, if you live in a big city, we'll just round up to 100K. You've now got $9,900,000 to invest. And if you see a 4% return on that, you see where I'm going with this. That's why we have a progressive tax system, because the more power you have, the easier it is for you to obtain power. So it's not necessarily, it's not that it isn't earned, but it, to an extent, gets easier as time goes on. And it's true for everything. Power attracts power. They say that getting the first 1,000 Twitter followers is the hardest. And then after 10,000, you're in like the top 1% of Twitter accounts. But think about it this way. I put out a tweet. I've got like 157,400 or so Twitter followers. If I tweet something, the likelihood that that gets shared and viewed by hundreds of thousands of people is extremely high because of the amount of followers I have. Whereas I assure you, there are people who have significantly more important things to say than me, sometimes, not always, who don't get heard because they haven't made it to that point. So again, I'm not saying that's not earned, but I am saying that it does get easier after a certain amount of time, and that's why we have a progressive tax system. Feel free to disagree with the progressive tax system. I should say that's not the entire, not the whole reason. It's one of the reasons. It's one of the philosophies behind it. But again, feel free to disagree with it. I really don't care one way or another. I think, the whole thing's a political debate that is better left to people who have more to worry about, I suppose. If you're going to vote based on certain tax systems and you believe it should be a certain way, go for it. I really don't have an opinion on it. That's just my personal view. So I'll hop down now and take some of your comments on the matter and see what you have to say. Crony capitalism is real capitalism equals not real socialism. Yeah, when you talk to people about socialism, they often say that no real socialism has ever been implemented. That's technically true, but it's also kind of a cop-out. I think I was talking to Sargon about this at one point. Maybe it was recently, but the idea is, okay, you haven't successfully implemented communism or socialism. So the problem is, every time there's been an attempt at implementing it, people have starved or have been wiped out, which is kind of the problem. So I'm going to take some comments, and then I want to talk about cultural appropriation, because someone brought that up. And so we'll talk about cultural appropriation, because I got a good one that I've been pretty annoyed about. Derek Schaefer says, progressive tax system is effectively anti-monopoly for individuals. Yeah, I agree with that. 2.5K stolen today. I don't know what that refers to. Let's see, Mahavi says, Tim, you should encourage your journalistic followers to DM you. That is the solution to the problem of others potentially having more important messages than you represent them. I retweet people. I mean, yeah, sure. Shoot me a message. Shoot me an email. I'm always listening. Keep in mind, I'm not able to respond to all emails all the time, because I get a lot of emails. I have my email accounts on my Twitter profile, so I try to answer as many people as I can when I can. Communism has led to more deaths than capitalism. Direct deaths from government regimes choosing to kill people. Yes. And, there was something I read where someone said, well, what about all the starving people on the planet? And I'm just like, no, I don't think communism causes starvation. Lack of food and farming causes starvation. So you can't blame people who are starving in Africa on capitalism if the people who live there haven't found a way to sustain themselves. Most societies that are successful are sustaining themselves. Like, that's the kind of the point. So, Furious George, off topic. Your thoughts on Vicky Mochama's comment on CBC regarding Lindsay Shepherd. Also, have you decided on filing charges against Antifa in Germany? Happy holidays. I don't know what Vicky said about Lindsay Shepherd. I'm not entirely sure. And I didn't file charges on Antifa for a few reasons. One, I really don't want to get to an argument with people who say that you don't have a right to film, and then be hypocritical in that I would use that law. But also, someone pointed out to me, for one, without a lawyer, you shouldn't talk to the police or issue a statement regardless. And I'm not going to get a lawyer so that I can issue a statement to the police. This is not an instance of me contacting the police with a complaint. It's an issue of the police reaching out to me trying to get a statement. And if you're not familiar, there is a very famous, I believe it's an essay from a former Supreme Court justice who said, don't talk to the police. You should have a lawyer do it. And I'm not going to get a lawyer, so it is what it is. But someone also mentioned to me that them contacting me, it's likely that they're already investigating or prepared to file charges, and they simply would like more evidence in the matter. And I know that they've contacted some other people. More to the point, simply because someone took my photo, I kind of don't want to get into that territory. And I also don't want to deal with legal issues, honestly. So it is what it is. Norman Borlaug, the filthy GMF monster. Now mutants, Africans are flooding us. Are you talking about the... I believe Norman Borlaug wasn't GMO. He was selective breeding to increase crop yield. Favorite Christmas tradition? Sitting in my apartment by myself watching Doctor Who, because that's exactly what's happening right now, and it's been awesome. I think I've watched dozens of episodes of Doctor Who in the past couple days, because BBC America is running a marathon, and that's good stuff. At first, I'm pretty sure they were running the episodes out of order, and that really annoyed the hell out of me. Now they're running them in order, and so that's great. But I don't do Christmas. I don't think I've done Christmas in a really long time. So yeah, hey guys, let's talk about cultural appropriation. Because I got a story for you that I was just talking to a friend about. I don't know why this came up, but somebody brought it up. I think it was in the last super chat, or from the last live stream. But so when I was at Fusion, the movie Ghost in the Shell was coming out. All right, if you're not familiar, let's pull up Ghost in the Shell so you guys can get a gander at what that is. So this here's Ghost in the Shell, and maybe there's a... I think I'll get in trouble if I play the trailer, but maybe there's images that I can show you. So this is, Scarlett Johansson, and she's playing a woman who is in a prosthetic body, they call it. So she's basically like an android, kind of, but she's got like a human ghost. Essentially, it means her soul. Well, this is based on an anime called Ghost in the Shell, and the main character is Motoko Kusanagi, also known as the Major, and that's a Japanese name, if you haven't noticed. All right, so look at Scarlett Johansson, and this is the anime. Please open. So, I don't know. whatever. It is what it is. You can see that she's kind of like a cyborg of some sort. So now let me tell you a story, and we'll pop back over here because I got some other stuff to show you. They cried cultural appropriation and whitewashing when they announced they were going to be making this movie. They had everyone was complaining that a white woman was going to be playing a Japanese character. I was at Fusion at the time, and there was a phone call talking about it. And after they're on this phone call and listening to these people say, like, man, this whitewashing stuff's a big problem. Why can't they cast an Asian female lead to play Motoko? You know, this is so messed up. And I was like, yeah, like, I hear ya. Can I just say something? You know, I'm a pretty big fan of Ghost in the Shell, and Motoko Kusanagi is in a prosthetic body. One of the aspects of the show is that Motoko chooses the body she's in. You know, there's like one scene where Bato, who is like one of her like main officers, says, "Why do you choose female model bodies?" And so they make it a point that your race, your gender identity doesn't matter when you can choose what body you want to exist in. So I was like, actually, I think it's pretty pretty cool actually that they're going to have Scarlett Johansson play this character because, you know, in the movie, spoiler alert, if I'm ruining the movie for you, heads up, the original, her human form was a little Japanese girl, and they put her into a white body. And some people have even said that they felt that the character of Motoko was meant to be racially ambiguous because it was a generic prosthetic body. So I said this in this meeting, and they go, yeah, but, you know, it's like an anime, so it probably should be played by like a Japanese character, you know, if the character's name is Motoko. So now, let me tell you what I said next. I said, okay, well, maybe you guys know that a Japanese studio is making a Full Metal Alchemist live-action movie. Let me show you the characters in Full Metal Alchemist, if you're not familiar. Full Metal Alchemist is awesome. It's a steampunk show that takes place in a parallel Germany. At least one of the storylines makes it appear that it's in a parallel Germany. There's two stories. There's the anime-based story and the manga-based story. So Full Metal Alchemist deviated at one point, and then when the manga was completed, they created Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is more true to the manga. But in the anime version, they're in a parallel Germany. And as you can see, this is Alphonse Elric, who is a blonde kid. His last name is Elric. His father's last name is Hohenheim. And in the movie The Conqueror of Shambhala, which is after the anime, they actually travel to, I think it's World War One. I'm not sure, World War One or Two, and they're German. The parallel reality is German. Well, guess what? The Japanese studio had a Japanese actor playing a German kid. And so I said, you've got, you know, two characters, Alphonse Elric, who's got blonde hair and hazel eyes or gold eyes, and he's considered a German boy, or at least in some aspects of the lore, he's considered like a parallel German. And then you have, that's Edward Elric, and then Alphonse Elric, his brother, is blonde hair and blue eyes. And they're being played by a Japanese character. Do you feel the same outrage over like Japanese washing? And they just brushed it off and was like, what? No, that's not even an issue. That's Japan, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait, where's the internal consistency here? You're mad that Scarlett Johansson is playing literally a generic prosthetic body that doesn't even contradict Ghost in the Shell per se, but you're not mad that they're casting a Japanese guy to play a German character? Like, your issue isn't really about the fact that they're whitewashing. Your issue is just it's a cheap shot at claiming racism. So, as a fan of both Ghost in the Shell and Full Metal Alchemist, I took particular offense to the disingenuous narrative being put out when this movie was made, where everyone was crying whitewashing. They could have cast a Japanese person to play Motoko, absolutely, but I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world because it kind of plays well with this story of Ghost in the Shell, that this was a little Japanese girl and now she's in a prosthetic body, which changed her race, her appearance. And that's an interesting concept to explore for Ghost in the Shell, which they kind of do. Anyway, cultural appropriation. Thoughts? Furious George. Oh, okay, I was going to read the super chat, but that's one I already read before. Got about 10 minutes left, and then I gotta bounce. Thank you all for hopping in the super chat. Mega Tuna Melt. Don't point out my brainwash while I point out whitewash. Yeah. What Fender amp is that? I have no idea. It's a cheap one. Ben Wilkins says, our boy Tim is a weeb. I don't think I'm as big an anime fan as, I don't know, the anime. Like, I don't go to Comic-Con or any of these anime conventions or anything like that. It's just Adult Swim plays shows that I think are pretty decent shows, and I grew up mostly because of Adult Swim playing anime like Fooly Cooly, FLCL, Full Metal Alchemist, Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball Z. I mean, come on, man. If you were a millennial kid growing up, you watched Dragon Ball Z. I know they got Dragon Ball Super. Right now, I think the only anime that I really watched recently was One Punch Man, which is kind of a parody of anime, and I absolutely love One Punch Man. It's just so good at mocking. It's so good at mocking anime. I think it's great. Someone says, "What do you think about Kira?" The movie, I've never seen it. So there's a lot. Someone says, "What do you think about QAnon on 8chan CBTS?" I don't know what that is, unfortunately. Flash Arc says, "What do you think of MGTOW, MGTOW? That's men going their own way, I think, and its approach to feminism and the bad present-day male-female dynamic." I think people get bitter when they get attacked, and I think regardless of what community you're in, they're pointing the finger at the other community, and that just is part of the problem. If you want to have this mentality of like men going their own way and being like independent, not married or whatever, that's great. Stop complaining about. Stop. What is the word whinging? Is that it was Game of Thrones? I think that was kind of like a funny insult for someone complaining a lot. You can go your own way and not attack other groups of people, and this is especially true for what people consider like the SJWs, feminism, intersectional feminism. The amount of attacking they do, the amount of like anti-white rhetoric. I grew up believing that you shouldn't judge a character based on the color of their skin. You shouldn't judge someone based on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. And it blows my mind today that such a powerful quote from a civil rights leader who was very inspirational to me, with my family background and growing up on the south side of Chicago, that statement has taken to mean nothing these days, or to be actually racist. Apparently, like the idea of being colorblind is racist. This civil rights leader, man, it blows my mind that I don't even know what's going on anymore. Venator Lich says, regarding Antifa, I hear that members of Antifa in Germany are more aggressive and dangerous compared to members in the U.S. Your thoughts? 100% true. Absolutely. If you go to Luke Rudkowski's channel, We Are Change, this was a while ago. We were in Germany, in Hamburg at the same time. Someone started screaming Nazi and shoving Luke and this guy Max, and random people run up and start punching them. Like, people just sitting on the side, on the curb, run up and start hitting them. Like, that's how people... The Roomba is dying behind me. Can you hear that? Anyway, yeah, they're really, really aggressive. Let's see. Here's a comment. Light01, the whole idea of cultural appropriation keeps us in our boxes. Why can't we mix and mingle the world together? Friends, did you know that I'm mixed race? I take particular offense to this idea of cultural appropriation. Like, when my mom, does things that are Korean, is that cultural appropriation? Or like when she does things that are white? I don't understand like how mixed race culture, like mixed culture, mixed race families are supposed to compensate for your desires as it pertains to cultural appropriation. Like, should my dad not partake in my mom's culture? Is that offensive? What if my mom thinks it's funny? It's not offensive. Like, what if my dad... I'm pretty sure at some point my dad cooked, like, Korean food that my mom taught him how to make. Or, I'm pretty sure. Is that bad? What am I allowed to eat? Am I allowed to... there was a complaint, I think. Let me try and pull this up. That sushi was cultural appropriation. Yes, it's actually true. Look at this. Let me pull this up. Students complain that banh mi made from ciabatta and sushi from undercooked rice are evidence of culinary cultural appropriation. Okay, seriously, this is real. This stuff really happens. Students at Oberlin College made national headlines for casting complaints about bad dining hall food, a perennial lament of collegians, as problematic social justice failure. Basically, I guess they're saying that Vietnamese food is cultural appropriation. Banh mi Vietnamese sandwich that Stevenson's Dining Hall promised turned out to be a cheap imitation of the East Indian dish. Oh my stars and garters. You mean to tell me that cafeterias make crappy versions of food? I've had pizza that tastes like plastic. Is that cultural appropriation? What if the chef, the guy who made it, was Korean? Is he now appropriating Italian culture? This is the problem with the idea of cultural appropriation. I've always felt that when people would adopt things that, like when people are like, dude, I love Korean barbecue, and they go to a Korean barbecue place and there's like a white dude cooking the food or serving the food, I'm like, that's really cool. That makes me like really happy that there are people who don't entirely understand a certain aspect of like my cultural heritage, but they like it enough to try and replicate it. That's really awesome. Imagine if whenever we saw somebody commit some kind of act of appropriation, instead of ragging on them and telling them they're not allowed to culture mix, we said, dude, cool, you're wearing this thing. It doesn't mean what you think it is, though. Like, there's been complaints about, well, yeah, we'll leave it at that, right? When people go to Irish pubs and get drunk and eat shepherd's pie, should I get mad about that? How dare you? You're not Irish. How dare you eat my culture's food? No, I think it's really cool when I have a friend who's like Latino who's like, dude, I love shepherd's pie and a pint of Guinness. I'm like, yeah, Ireland, right? I'm part Irish, German, Irish, and Korean. So when I have friends tell me they like Korean barbecue and they want to go get some bulgogi, and we go to like an American corporate chain restaurant, I'm just like, man, that's really cool that aspects of my culture have somehow made it into America to the point where my friends who know nothing about it are here excited about it, and I can share something that I grew up with them. It makes me happy. And then you see these videos, right? There was a video where this dude with dreads, a white dude with dreads, got attacked by a black woman. Let me see if I can pull this up. And she said it was cultural appropriation, and you're stealing my culture. Yeah. Oh, it's the Young Turks. I Google searched it. I found the Young Turks. So, black woman scolds white man for dreads. I don't want to play a lot of their videos, but you can just see you got this white dude with dreads, and there's the black woman, and she's yelling at him, and she grabs him, like he pulls away. Look at her, like this is what gets me. This dude's like, you know what? Let me put up the audio on this.
That's no reason, yo. I don't need your disrespect. I don't need your disrespect.
Why are you filming this?
For everyone's safety.
Alright, wait, let's go back real quick.
Huh? Dude, go. You have no right to tell me what I can or not. Huh? Yo, girl, stop touching me. Yo, girl, stop touching me right now. Come back. Get off of me.
Come back. You put your hands on me,
That's no reason, yo. I don't need your disrespect. I don't need your disrespect.
Why are you filming this?
For everyone's safety.
Oh, that's good.
Did you play this
I know. Mine didn't have as long as dreads. This is awesome. I got a lot of comments. I'll wait till you go.
Let's see what they have to say about it
This
real
is
quick.
hilarious.
This video, okay, so first let me clarify some misreporting that's been done with this story. It's been reported that this woman is an employee. She is not an employee. San Francisco State University has come forward and they said, no, she's not an employee. Now, with that said, this video enraged me. Like, why are you going after just a random student who happens to have dreadlocks and antagonizing him? And
I
then,
agree with that.
Look, you want to start a dialogue about cultural appropriation, that's one thing. But once you put your hands on someone, that's it. You lose any and all support that you might have. It's unacceptable. Do not put your hands on anyone. Don't put your hands on anyone at a Trump rally. Don't put your hands on anyone when you're having a disagreement about cultural appropriation.
All right. She's got some, I think she might be, I don't want to just play a ton of Young Turks, but hey, I agree with that. Don't put your hands on people. That's not okay. What I will say is that, whenever someone subscribes, I turned the sound off before. Did you know that dreadlocks have a cultural history in Scandinavia and Northern Europe? In which case, no, that was not cultural appropriation. Assuming that guy has Nordic cultural ancestry, it wasn't even cultural appropriation. This idea that dreads are somehow only a part of black culture, it's just not true. So, at least I should say I believe that to be the case. I'm not an anthropological expert in Scandinavia or anything like that, but I know tons of Scandinavian people with dreads, and that's at least what they tell me. So I'll take their word for it for now, but it's also kind of something I've heard before. So, oh man, oops. If I forget to turn off the display, that's what happens. So, we'll hop over. I think I got a super chat here. Someone said, AGK, super chat, Cory in the House is my favorite anime. Also, have you watched Space Battleship Yamato 2199? No, I haven't, but isn't Cory in the House a live-action show from, like, the Disney Channel? The Coward Liberius, mixed race just means that no matter what you do, you're being 50% appropriative. Way to be an oppressor, Tim. That's how it feels. I got more stories. Derek Weissman, write the truth in fiction. The Son of Saint Death is based on racism, drug abuse, and the occult. All real but told through lies. Merry Christmas. Flash Arc, super chat. What do you think of reports that an unqualified head of security diversity hire was part of the reason the Equifax hack occurred? I don't know anything about it, so I don't really have a comment on it. If that's the case, that's pretty dumb. You should make sure you hire experts. But I don't know if that's true or not, so I don't really want to comment. So, during Occupy Wall Street, I had people tell me that no matter, like, it was kind of like no matter what I did, I was wrong to one group of people, and no matter what I did, I was right to one group of people. There was an instance where there was a white dude and a black dude, and they were talking, and I was hanging out. I was just like, we were all hanging out, and they were having an argument, and I kind of was just chilling, minding my own business, not really saying much. And then I started to disagree. They were talking about things like giving people privileges based on their race, gender identity, and stuff like that. Like allotting them more resources, giving them more money. And I was like, well, hold on, man. I think, look, the amount of resources someone should get should be based on the work they do, not on where they come from, what the color of their skin is. Because that same argument is like, you say that white people have privilege. Okay, well, if we want to stop that, let's just level everything out and say privilege is based on work ethic. And so if you have a white dude and a black dude and the white dude doesn't work, white dude doesn't get any resources. The black guy in the argument immediately, actually, I'm sorry, both the black dude and the white guy both immediately were like, dude, no, you're so wrong. And I was like, whoa, chill, man. I was like, this is how I feel. And then the black dude goes, you're white. What do you know about any of this? The white dude agrees with him. And he says something like, look, man, you just got to understand your privilege, blah, blah. And then I went, I'm mixed race. My mom's Korean. And the white dude goes, oh. Now I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, sorry about that. I was like, what? And the black dude wasn't having it still. He was like, I don't care what you say you are, you look white. And that's kind of been the circumstances of, like, my experience with these things. There's a reason why I don't like the far left and the far right. I've had racists, vandalize my family's property growing up. And more closer to the present, I should say, you have the far left. Like, no matter what I do when I have discussions with the far left, I'm either white. If I agree with them, I'm mixed. If I disagree with them, I'm white. And that seems to be the problem. When this dude at Occupy Wall Street found out that I was mixed, my opinion all of a sudden mattered. And that's probably one of the most offensive things ever. The condescending, belittling attitude of, I won't respect your opinion if you're white, but once I find out you're a minority, oh, now I have respect for you. I was about to swear, but you know what? I'm not going to swear. That guy has no respect for me. That guy is just scared, I guess. He's worried about coming off like a racist, but all he does is come off like a racist, and I'm not going to stand for that. And the same thing for that black guy who was just like, dude, I don't care what you are, you look white. I'm like, dude, you don't know what I've been through? To just assume that someone's had a good life and been privileged because you think they look white? This is probably one of the most annoying arguments I have, because I generally disagree with this idea of handing out privilege based on race, because I believe we should judge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But then people say to me that, like, I'm passing and things like that, and that there's no way I can really understand, and it's like internalized white supremacy and other nonsense. And I just give up at that point. I'm just over it. I don't even know how you talk to those people, because if you agree with them, they're like, well, that's because you're mixed. You really experience this kind of stuff. Did you know mixed race is the smallest minority in the country? Yeah, that's right. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear and agree with everything you have to say when you fit their agenda. That's how tribalism works, and that's why I just don't care for anybody's tribe. So I'll take a couple more questions before we get out of here. If you're watching, make sure to hit the thumbs up button because that really helps the channel. So just mash that thumbs up. You can follow me on Twitter at TimCast. The super chat is available when you give. Your comments will appear on the screen, and also helps me do the work that I do. So it's just another aspect of funding for me and my journalism. And make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And make sure you go to my second channel, which is youtube.com/c/TimCastNews. It's my backup channel. I got a long video. It's about 20 minutes where I just talk about this Vice article. And I've had a lot of people say like I'm white knighting or politically correct. But whatever. It is what it is. You guys know that I'm not always on one side or the other, so take it or leave it. This Vice issue, this story is personal because I've experienced this. I worked there. And the people who are making these accusations, I worked with. So take it for what it is. We'll take some more questions before I split because we're over the hour I normally do this. Someone mentioned that Furikuri is really good. Yes. Someone wants me to stream a game, please. Yeah, I could just, once I finish here, I could just turn on Hearthstone if you guys want to watch some Hearthstone. No, I don't think I should play Hearthstone. I think I should wrap up some analytics stuff and email stuff. But, you know, George Wood wants to let me know. He says, Tim, it's okay to be white. Someone said Tim is mixed race. Never heard that before. But this is why it's like become a joke, because it seems like so many people accuse me of like white supremacy or something, and far from the truth. Like, my family is the opposite of that, you know? We are the embodiment of the white genocide so feared by many in the alt-right. My dad, a German-Irish dude, found a Korean woman, had a bunch of babies, you know? There you go. It is what it is. Someone said, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas just like the ones I used to know. And I think that's not so much about snow, but more about race. But you know, that leads me to a funny thought. I was thinking about this, like, in Australia, do they have Christmas at the same time as we do? I'd imagine they do, because I don't think religion, like holidays, change their time of year simply because they're in a different hemisphere. In which case, are they dreaming of a green Christmas? It's summer, you know? It's like warm. And how do the rest of the Christmas songs work? Do they play the same Christmas music in Australia? Does anybody live in Australia? I want this question answered. I'm gonna tweet about it to all my Australian friends. Is your Christmas music the same, like White Christmas and Dashing Through the Snow, Jingle Bells? Like, how do you sing that in Australia? Somebody wants me to play guitar. It's 8:08. I don't think I really have I don't have it in me today. Maybe I'll my second channel at some point, but I think I'm about ready to split. The young Turks are very radical, someone says. My friend can't grow a beard. Is he secretly Asian? Perhaps. Let me make sure I didn't miss any other. Pope Dope, Super Chat, said, thanks for the hard work, Tim. Thank you very much. And I guess, you know, the last thing I'll say is follow, subscribe, all that stuff. Yeah, I don't know what else to add. It's upside down. Tim, you fool, in Florida, we still listen to Christmas music. Laughing my ass off. Well, yeah, I understand in Florida because it's like the U.S., it's the northern hemisphere, but I mean Australia where the seasons are inverted, right? Right? Is the proposed college tour coming to Canada? Are you asking me if I'm going to do a college tour? Hey, I'm more than happy to do a college speaking tour if people want a college speaking tour. I don't know if you're referring to me or somebody else. I've got... I've been invited to Scandinavia for a speaking thing. We'll see if that happens. I've got like 2 or 3 speaking events coming up in the coming months. So we'll see what happens. But yeah. Somebody wants me to hit a bong on air. I don't smoke. I rarely drink. The most I've had to drink is in the past month or so, which was like I've had like 2 ciders every Saturday. I think a total of like 5 ciders over the past month from Angry Orchard, because my friend's warehouse, he bought cider. You know, and that's about the most that I've ever had to drink. All right, I think it's about time to split to wrap things up. We've gone over. Thank you guys so much for hanging out for this live stream, and I try to do more live streams more often. I might come back on in maybe an hour or 2 and play some Hearthstone on my second channel if you want to watch that live. People are mad they don't want me to close the pool, but the pool's closing. So make sure you hit the thumbs up button, give the live player channel a like, because it helps. I think it helps. I don't know if it helps. And subscribe if you haven't. Subscribe to my second channel, which is TimCast News. It's on the side of my YouTube channel. I'm on Twitter at Timcast. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for everybody who donates on Patreon and on PayPal and Mines. It's greatly appreciated. Help me do the work that I do. Demon Hunter, thank you for the $2 super chat. If you want to support me, go to timcast.com/donate, and you can give whatever you'd like or not give me a damn thing. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all tomorrow.